Hello and welcome to a somewhat inaugural episode of BTP, brought to you by ITP, Inside the Pylon. This somewhat maiden voyage of breaking the plane that we are about to embark on is without the great quarterback guru himself, Mark Schofield, and the talented John Ledyard. Mark is still doing fantastic work for us over at Inside the Pylon, and he is the host of Locked On Patriots. I encourage you to download that. It is incredibly informative. And John is with NDT Scouting, and he is the host of Locked On the NFL Draft. Again, I highly encourage you to go and download both of those podcasts. Can I fill the shoes of these two very knowledgeable individuals?
No. Hell no. I refuse. No.
But here I am, staying optimistic, and I always
Play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
Exactly, Mr. Herm Edwards. Best of luck in the college ranks. Who am I, you may ask? Well, I am Nicholas Falato, and a quick background on me. I am a Scouting Academy alum. If you have not heard of the Scouting Academy, go to the Google machine and type it in. It is ran by Dan Hatman, a former pro scout at the NFL level. You must check them out. Incredibly great operation they have going on over there. I've been with Inside the Pylon for just over a year. I helped them out with the draft guide last year, where I scouted safeties and the defensive tackle position. This year, for the 2018 Inside the Pylon draft guide, which will be available April 1st, pre-orders are coming shortly, I scouted the defensive tackles and the edge position. I also host my own independent podcast titled Footballin', where you can catch me complaining about the Knicks and, to a lesser extent, the New York Rangers. Especially this season, it has been absolutely ugly, but it's a football podcast, so we're going to focus on football. And today, we are going to talk about the NFL Combine. I'm also a college student who is an assistant football coach at my school, Fairleigh Dickinson University, which we are actually being broadcasted live right now on the TuneIn Radio app, Devils Radio, Florham campus, on the beautiful campus of Fairleigh Dickinson in Madison, New Jersey. Not the one in Teaneck, not the one that makes the tournament and the one that everybody talks about. Anyways, I wanted to go over position by position, just briefly, some risers, some people who might have a really good combine, and go over some of these individuals. I'm not going to sit here and bullcrap you and act like I watched people that I have not watched. So we're going to briefly go through these position groups. Again, I focused heavily on the defensive line and the edge positions this season, but obviously I've seen Sam Darnold, I've seen Josh Rosen, I've seen the majority of bigger players that are coming into this draft cycle, which is incredibly exciting. I loved Combine Week, and we are ready to dive into the quarterback position. And the one quarterback that everybody's talking about right now is Sam Darnold. Why are they talking about Sam Darnold? Because he has elected to not throw at the Combine. People are wondering why. Does he have an injury? He does not have an injury. Nothing of that sort whatsoever. But Sam, coming out of USC, has chosen to not throw, maybe because he's getting some news from the NFL. Maybe he's getting some advice that he doesn't need to, because he might be the favorite for the Cleveland Browns right now. There's no reason to go and throw. He might as well go to his pro day at USC, where he's throwing to the receivers that he knows, the receivers that he is used to, in a setting that he is used to, instead of going and doing this at the Combine. So he's elected to do that, and people are giving him some, I don't want to say crap for it, but they are questioning why. Now, I look at Sam, I say, look, you came out somewhat early, you ended on a bad note in college. Obviously, you didn't have a chance to go to the Senior Bowl because you weren't a senior. Do you want to go and kind of make that initial impression on the scouts in front of the entire NFL world that will be in Indianapolis? Sam thinks not. So he will wait until March 22nd when USC holds their pro day, and he'll throw then. It's looking like Sam Darnold's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft. There are rumors coming out that the Browns are really interested in him. So that is great news for Mr. Sam Darnold. Person that intrigues me the most through this combine process at the quarterback position is none other than Lamar Jackson, coming out of Louisville. Now, Lamar Jackson, you can go to Inside the Pylon right now, and you can see Mark Schofield's piece on Lamar, It's basically, Mark Schofield was a lawyer, if you are not aware. And it basically is a defendant's piece of Lamar Jackson, because there are a lot of people in draft media, especially the big media, that are coming out saying that Lamar Jackson is better off at being a wide receiver, a position that he has never played, because they want the ball in his hands more, which honestly makes absolutely no sense, because if he's going to play quarterback, he's going to have the ball in his hands as much as possible. But for whatever reason, people do not like Lamar Jackson as a quarterback. Our Mark Schofield disagrees. I also disagree. The tape I have seen on Lamar Jackson, he seems like he has progressed each season in college, and he's doing this with a subpar supporting cast. That includes his offensive line and his wide receivers. So I look at Lamar Jackson, and I see him coming in here. He's more than likely going to run the fastest 40, I would imagine, out of any of these quarterbacks. He's going to do well in all of the agility drills. And again, for the combine, you have the 40-yard dash, you have the bench press, you have the vertical jump, the broad jump, the 20-yard shuttle, the 3-cone, and the 60-yard shuttle. Then you also have the position-specific skills, like the gauntlet for wide receivers, quarterbacks have the throwing skills, and things of that nature. For the tackles and things of that, you have the kick slide and all those movement skills for the offensive lineman. Remember Eric Flowers doing that a couple years ago, and he ended up getting drafted in the top 10, even though his kick slide was all jacked up. But that's a story for another day. I'm a Giants fan, by the way. Full disclosure on that. But I look at Lamar. He can go down there. He can run a 4.3, high 4.3, and just really wow everybody, something along those lines. Could get the mind changed. And I'm not even really 100% sure how the NFL values Lamar Jackson. Is Bill Polian and big media getting those reports from NFL teams? I want to move him to wide receiver, or is this just pre-draft fodder that we always hear? Because that is something that happens as well. And remember, another big important thing about the combine, not just the drills, but also the interview process. They want to see how you are. There's the medicals, and then there's the interview process. That's going to be big for Josh Rosen. Now, for Josh Rosen, coming out of UCLA, a lot of pre-draft hoopla, I guess, for lack of a better term, is that teammates didn't like him and that he is opinionated, and it might rub teams the wrong way to have their face of the franchise have his own opinions. I think that's a little bit ridiculous, if you ask me. Now, I can't speak on his relationship with his teammates or anything of that nature. I'm not at UCLA. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I am. But the fact that he has some opinions on certain things, that doesn't really bother me that much. Especially when you watch Josh Rosen, to me, seems like he is the most natural and the best overall passer of the group. I think his weight is going to mean something as well. According to NFL.com, he weighs in at 218. He does have a somewhat slight frame. We have seen him have medical issues, concussion, shoulder, things of that nature for Josh Rosen. So durability can be a concern. But he is the best overall passer in this group. But I also think all of those interviews, they want to see how he is as a kid. They want to see how he clicks. But Josh Rosen, more than likely, top 5 pick. He's being mocked to the Giants. He's being mocked a little bit to the Browns. He just came out today and spoke about how he has there's no foundation, is what he said. No foundation to the fact that he does not want to play for the Browns. Now, we remember during the college football season, he said that he'd rather fall into the better situation and be drafted later than be drafted high and fall into a negative situation. And a lot of people just took that as a shot at the Browns. And from the outside, it really does look like that. But I think the Browns would love to have a guy like Josh Rosen. I'm sure Hugh Jackson would love to have a guy like Josh Rosen. So that interview will be big for Josh Rosen, as it will be for Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield, as we all know, has had some issues on the field with his personality. Now, I just think of it as he's an edgy player. Maybe he should find a better way to channel said edge. He doesn't really have any off-the-field incidents outside of the drinking incident where he was tackled. Sue the guy. Seriously, he's a college student. They drink. And I know people said the same thing about Johnny Manziel, but the comparisons to Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield are absolutely ridiculous just because they're both shorter, mobile, white quarterbacks who have questionable character off the field. And I don't think Baker does. He had the one incident. And then you look at him grabbing his crotch against, I think it was at Dorrance Armstrong is where he did that too, who was an intriguing prospect in his own right. And then him planting the flag. I just think it's him needing to channel the edge that he has. I don't have any really concerns about Baker, but the NFL teams and that interview process is going to be really big for the kid. I also want to see his weight again. I know he went down to the Senior Bowl. I was down there, but I didn't get to see him be weighed in because he did show up somewhat late because of a family emergency, which media was giving him crap for that too. I found that also to be somewhat ridiculous. But Mayfield is another player that could go in the top 10. He's a very, very tough kid. Plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's been written off way too many times. Got to Oklahoma after transferring from Texas Tech. And you know what? He's proven everybody wrong for so long after being a walk-on and a walk-on. So he's the kind of kid I pull for. I would love to have him in New York, either with the Jets or the Giants. The teams are going to be questioning him when it comes to how he handles the spotlight, especially with cities like New York. Because we all know New York is just one of those cities that can eat you alive. I think JT Barrett's going to go down there, and he's going to have a great interview process because that's just JT Barrett. It seems like he's killed that throughout this offseason. I don't think he's going to be an NFL starter. That's not a hot take by any stretch of the imagination. But when he was at the East-West Shrine game, it seemed like teams were falling in love with him. His personality. We know Urban Meyer fell in love with this kid's personality. So JT Barrett is one of those kind of guys. And then leads me to Kyle Lauletta. Kyle Lauletta out of Richmond, FCS school, the Spiders. Kyle Lauletta really went down to the Senior Bowl and had a great week and then really balled out during the game. And he's one of those people who are skyrocketing up boards. I don't really know much about his athleticism. I know he would break through runs at the FCS level and play really well doing that. But again, I'm not sure how fast his 40-yard dash is going to be. But I think he could be one of those people who sneaks up into late day 2 range, kind of like C.J. Beathard did last year. And just off the eye test, I think Lauletta is a better prospect than Beathard. So going through these quarterbacks, looking at those top guys that I just talked about, and there's one, I'm sure you're waiting for me to say his name, and that is Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen, he's going to need to do good in the position-specific drills, as well as the interview, as well as really everything, because he's been sort of the individual of the group who has been mocked really high, but then you go and you watch his tape. You see his issues with inaccuracy. You see his issues with anticipation, throwing receivers open, missing wide open throws. But then you see him throw a 30-yard dart right on target, and you say, damn, that is what teams love. And obviously his size. He has prototypical quarterback size. We saw him go to the Senior Bowl. He struggled for the first couple drives. And then what did he do? He came down, used his legs a bunch of times, Blake Bortles-esque in his playoff run, and then he had a pretty good second half after coming back into the game. So Josh Allen, it's a big week for him. Absolutely huge week for him. And I think if you really look at it in that light, if anybody has the most to gain from the combine in the quarterback position, it's got to be between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I think I'm going to go with Lamar. But at the same time, if these individuals, if they actually do have the mindset that Lamar Jackson is going to be a wide receiver, you think if he runs a really fast 40, they're going to just make him want to be a wide receiver even more? So I really hope Lamar goes down there and he kills the throwing portion of the combine. Then he has his pro day and goes and does the same thing. Remember Teddy Bridgewater coming out of Louisville as well? Wore the glove, threw him off, made him slide to the end of the first round to Minnesota. But Louisville will have to wait till March 30th because that's when their pro day is. So I really hope Lamar goes down there and does work because he deserves it. Also, I think somebody who might be able to give Lamar Jackson a run for his money when it comes to the 40-yard dash, It's Quentin Flowers. Very, very fast out of South Florida. Now, he's nowhere near the passer Lamar Jackson is. And he's a lot smaller than Lamar Jackson. I want to say he's like 5'11 or something along those lines. But Quentin Flowers, South Florida, somebody who might give Lamar a run for his money when it comes to the 40-yard dash. Moving on to the running back position. Now, the running backs, again, quarterbacks aren't my specialty. They're not my forte, my Matt forte, but I have a foundational understanding of them. When it comes to the running backs, I do love watching some of these running backs. And when it comes to individuals who could just win every drill, and you look at Saquon Barkley, and that's kind of the easy go-to right there. When it comes to his overall explosiveness, his lower body explosiveness is absolutely ridiculous. Going to be a shoo-in to be a top 10 pick, I'd say. I don't know, top 5 he could. I can realistically see him sliding out of the top 5. But then at the same time, I can see him being picked number 1 overall. There's no doubting his athletic ability. Now, his vision, things of that nature, you can see on tape, he has some indecisiveness. And it plagues him from time to time. It really does. But that size and that explosiveness that he does carry, he can literally be one of these Todd Gurley type of running backs, these all-pro type of running backs at the next level. But when you're playing in the NFL, you can't bounce every run outside. You can't just bounce runs outside of the tackle box and expect to outrun everybody. It's not going to work that way. And he may find that out the hard way. So he's going to need to work on some of these inconsistencies when it comes to his vision and his decisiveness, hitting the hole in the interior parts of the offensive line, the A-gap, things of that nature. But Saquon Barkley, obviously, I don't really need to sit here and elaborate on him too much. We all know him. We all know he's going to be one of these top picks. Now, the one person that I think has the most to prove from the combine is Nick Chubb. Now, I say that because we remember Nick Chubb coming out of high school. He was an absolute freak. The way his body was built and how athletic he was. You see the pictures of him jumping in a track uniform, and it looks like it's photoshopped because he's just that explosive and that athletic. And then we saw all the injuries he had with his knee at Georgia. But this season he came out and he balled. Him and Sony Michel were one of the best 1-2 punches in the country. They could each be day 2 picks. Both of them. I love Sony Michel. But Nick Chubb, he has a lot to prove when it comes to how good is that knee? How explosive is he? Because he's somebody I could see winning the broad jump, the vertical. But there's going to be question marks about his medicals, and rightfully so. But I really hope he comes down there and his knee checks out, because Nick Chubb's somebody I've been rooting for since he went to the University of Georgia. I think Nick Bowden, the fullback from San Diego State, some of his highlights, blocking for Rashad Penny and Donnell Pumphrey from last year, are so fun to watch. I'm wondering what his bench press reps could be. But he just plowed over people. I just wanted to bring him up. You got Josh Adams from Notre Dame. Ran behind Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey all season. I'm not 100% sure how he's going to do in the agility drills, the 3-cone and the 40. I don't think he's as good of an athlete as a lot of these other running backs that I'm about to talk about, and Saquon and Nick Chubb. And I look at Sony Michel, brought him up just before. Sony Michel, when he walked the sideline, I want to say it was in the game against Oklahoma, and he was able to keep his balance. It showed a lot to me. This kid has so much balance, so much explosiveness, hitting the hole with a decisive nature. And Sony Michel, I think he's going to be an early day 2 pick. I think he could be somebody who could sneak up into the first day, but I'm not 100% sure if how many running backs will honestly go in the first day. You have Saquon Barkley. I think Darius Geis should definitely go in the first day, but I'm not 100% sure if he will. Sony Michel is somebody that I absolutely love going through this draft process, as is Darius Geis. Darius Geis, he played through that ankle injury this season. Now, we saw him in relief for Leonard Fournette last year, and we saw how effective he was. And it's somebody that I quickly realized, wow, this guy is going to be something. And I love the fact that he responds to people on Twitter who try to dog him, who think that he isn't as good as he's being advertised. I just like the fact that he has that kind of mentality. He's very confident in himself. And his tape, again, 2016, 2017, it's a lot different. And I think people are going to look at that. But when you have a nagging high ankle sprain that is going on all year and you're a running back, you rely on your ankles. You do. So I look at Darius Geis, a guy who can run through you. He can elude you. I think he's a player who can come in here, and have good three-cone and do all those things if that ankle is healthy. And he's one of my favorite running backs in this class. Then I look at a guy like Nyheim Hines from North Carolina State. He's somebody who could threaten the top 40-yard dash. Haven't watched much tape on him, but I've seen a couple kick returns and things of that nature, and I was like, damn, that kid has some burst. You have Royce Freeman from Oregon. He's more of a zone type of runner, but I think his athletic testing is going to mean a lot because he is 6 foot, about 235 pounds. But he's not one of those kind of backs that are going to run right through you. He's not one of those kind of backs that fall through contact as much as you would want him to be with the size that he has. He's not that Brandon Jacobs. Brandon Jacobs was like 265. Absolute beast. So Royce Freeman, his athletic testing. Same with Kalen Ballage, same with Rashad Penny. How are they going to do? We saw Kalen Ballage down at the Senior Bowl, showed off incredible receiving skills. Out of the backfield, Rashad Penny had that long touchdown in the Senior Bowl, catching the ball. I want to say it was from Kurt Benkert. But how are they going to test in comparison with the rest of these running backs? It's going to be important for these guys. Kalen Ballage from Arizona State, Rashad Penny from San Diego State. I want to make a point in doing that, by the way, because sometimes people are new to listening to podcasts and they don't know who you're talking about. I want to say it was Trevor Sikkema was talking up Chase Edmonds when he was down at the East-West Shrine game in Florida. And I think Chase Edmonds ended up getting hurt during the week. But I do the NFL mock draft for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I find myself drafting Chase Edmonds in the 7th round with one of the 2 picks that they have. It's the daily mock draft. That is pretty dope. You should probably check it out, to be honest. But I want to see how this kid runs. Small school, Fordham, up in the Bronx. Local to me. I'm from Jersey, by the way, so I'm always going to be pulling for Jersey guys. So Chase Edmonds, somebody I'm going to monitor. When it comes to just burst, explosiveness, and speed, USC's Ronald Jones might be the person that you really want to be paying attention to. Rojo, as he's called, he's incredibly explosive for the Trojans this past year. Runs behind his pads. Now, again, he's only about 195 pounds, something along those lines, but he has incredibly quick feet. A lot of people have him in the top 5 of his running backs. People are comparing him to Jamal Charles. I've heard that comparison a bunch of times from a bunch of people on draft Twitter. But I look at Rojo, and I think he's probably going to be the person with the fastest 40. He's going to be up there, definitely. The 10-yard split, he's more than likely going to have that because he has that initial burst where he gets the ball and can explode through the hole. I think Rojo is very, very intriguing. You got bigger guys like Bo Scarborough for Alabama. I want to see what he runs. And he's much bigger. He's probably going to be a 6th-round pick, something along those lines. But how is he going to do here at the Combine, being that size? I think Mark Walton is in a place to improve his stock. Another running back that has been forgotten about somewhat. Starting to see more draft Twitter getting involved on Mark Walton. But he's a slighter guy. He's pretty short, but he's strong. And he's one of those people that I've seen be mocked in like the 5th round to teams. Him and John Kelly. And a lot of running back gurus, and even me. I haven't done full evaluations on the 2 individuals, but the tape I have seen, they seem like they'd be great values in the 4th, 5th rounds, in the mid part of the draft. So speaking of John Kelly, I do think the 40-yard dash is going to be really important for him. So if he goes out there and runs like a 4.6, it's not going to look good. But if he goes out there and runs in the 4.4s, low 4.5s, can really skyrocket his grade. That's why this week is so huge. We've seen it happen time and time again. Obi Melanfonu went down to the Senior Bowl, started opening eyes. Just a safety out of UConn. UConn's not known for its football. It's known for its female basketball, if anything. And it's basketball. It's male basketball. But Obi Melanfonu comes 2nd in the broad jump, just behind his former teammate, Byron Jones. And what happens? Skyrockets up boards. So this is why this is so important. This is why I'm sitting here talking about it on this podcast, breaking the plane, excited to be here. But yes, we're going to move away from the running back position. Spent a lot of time on that. We got wide receivers. I know Joseph Ferriola does great work for Inside the Pylon on wide receivers. I really wanted to get him on this show to speak on wide receivers. I haven't done much wide receiver research. Not as much as at least I would have liked to. But you have your main guys, Calvin Ridley, coming out of Alabama. Now, people are saying he's not as good as Amari Cooper, things of that nature, but his production was limited, and you could check this out at Inside the Pylon by Joseph Ferriola's piece, why his production was limited, because the quarterback situation. Jalen Hurts just could not get him the ball downfield when he was creating excellent separation from the receivers. That's not on him. But, stat sheet doesn't lie when it comes to that kind of stuff. I think Cortland Sutton, what is he going to run? You want Cortland Sutton to run in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s, being a somewhat bigger wide receiver. Because we've seen this a couple years ago. We saw this with Laquan Treadwell. He ran a 40 that wasn't as high as what a lot of people thought. Can he separate was the biggest question. And people said, well, he's great at the catch point. He'll be the next Dez Bryant. Guess what? He wasn't, and he's not. He can't separate. He can't create separation on his own, out of his stems, out of his breaks, or anything of that nature. That's a big deal down here. And you could tell a lot from the positional drills. You could tell a lot from the 40, the 10-yard split, and the agility drills to see how fast these guys are. So Cortland Sutton, I hope he goes down there and he kills that drill. Same with Auden Tate, another bigger receiver out of Florida State who may have some questions about his separation. Because he's 6'5", just over 220. And he's a huge target, huge catch radius. People are comparing him to Devin Funchess and receivers of that ilk. But Auden Tate, is he going to be quick enough to separate? That's the biggest question. And then we have Equinemius St. Brown. Is it the coolest name in the draft? I am not 100% sure. But he's somebody coming out of Notre Dame. Again, quarterback situation, a little bit subpar. Wimbush is new. He ended up dealing with injuries. They ran the ball a lot. It was against the identity of their offense to throw as much as Equinemius St. Brown could have maximized, maybe. You could look at it that way. So what is he going to run? We saw Will Fuller go down there and run on the 4.3s and skyrocket into the first round of the Texans. So Equinemius St. Brown, another person I'm going to be watching. And you got James Washington out of Oklahoma State. Got a chance to chill with him a little bit. I say chill with him like he's my boy. I got a chance to talk with him a little bit down in Mobile. And he has a pretty cool personality. I asked him who the toughest cornerback he faced was. He said his rookie, look at me, his freshman year at Oklahoma State, going up against Xavier Howard of Baylor, was the toughest matchup he had. Xavier, I want to say, was a senior at the time, or at least a redshirt junior or something along those lines. James Washington said he was the most difficult corner that he faced. James Washington, the thing about James Washington is he's built sort of like a running back, and he wore, I think it was number 28, which is a running back's number. And he has long legs, he's a long strider, and he is a really, really good deep threat, but his route tree, somewhat limited. He ran a lot of flies. That's all I'm going to say. So how can he do on these agility drills? Can he separate? I thought he showed up pretty well at the Senior Bowl, but I wasn't really focused on him as much as I would have liked to be because I was watching the edge group. I think Deontay Burnett, coming out of USC, is another player, smaller, slighter player. How is he going to test when it comes to the 40, when it comes to these quickness type of drills? Also, I'm not sure how well he will do on the bench press because he's somewhat slighter. I think Antonio Callaway has so much to prove when it comes to the interviews. Coming out of Florida, gets kicked off, the program doesn't play all year, gets the invite to the Combine. And will teams want to touch him? Because before he had all these issues at Florida, these significant ones that led to him being separated from the team, he was being mocked in first rounds. People were talking a lot about Antonio Callaway, but all these off-the-field issues are going to be concerns. Can he address them here at the Combine of teams? You got DJ Chark coming out of LSU. As Joseph Ferriola once put it, the Tiger Chark, which I thought was really clever and funny, and I chuckled at it, as did Mr. Jim Carrey. He thought it was funny as well. But DJ Chark, Danny Etling, and the quarterback situation they had at LSU wasn't exactly desirable. So he's somebody who can really kind of maximize his skill set to have more production, to kind of outproduce what he did at college. And we've seen that from LSU receivers in the past. He's somebody who can run an incredibly fast 40 as well. He seems like he has that kind of explosiveness. Deshaun Hamilton is a bigger slot type receiver. I don't want to just compare him to Jordan Matthews because he's a bigger slot type receiver, but we've seen Deshaun Hamilton have one of the best off seasons so far from the receiver class. Went down to Mobile. He was at the East-West Shrine game, and he did well at both of those locations. So can he do the same? He's coming out of Penn State. Christian Kirk, what's his agility drills going to be like? He's going to be that slot kind of receiver. What's his top-end speed like? How will he be able to dominate those drills? And we will see. I look at Christian Kirk, and I think he's somebody who is going to be perfect coming out of the slot, utilizing the same skill set that he used at Texas A&M in the NFL. We've seen the NFL move towards these multiple receiver fronts, sometimes having two slots. So Christian Kirk, it's going to be a place in the league. Will he be a first-round pick? Not 100% sure. When you look at these receivers, who's going to be a first-round pick? Will Cortland Sutton be a first-round pick? Calvin Ridley, I would stamp that as a first-round pick, yes. Then you look at the other guys, say, what about DJ Moore? Another very intriguing young receiver. But will he be a first-round pick? It's yet to be seen, but we'll find out. Let's move on. I'll briefly go through tight end, offensive line. I haven't seen as much film on them as I would have liked to. I don't think there's any amazing athletes coming out of the tight end group. I look at Durham Smythe coming out of Notre Dame. I think he was somewhat underutilized again. He's more of that run blocker. They ran the ball a lot, but I think he will provide a pretty good skill set when it comes to catching the pass out of the backfield. He just wasn't utilized in that manner at Notre Dame, but I think he can do it. And that's what you're really looking for. So I look at Durham Smythe. I look at Dalton Schultz, the kid from Stanford. Dalton Schultz, Ryan Ducarm does great work for us at Inside the Pylon, has a piece on him up right now. He could be one of those sneaky athletic tight ends coming out of a school that traditionally produces very good tight ends. Austin Hooper, Zach Ertz. Stanford has been putting them into the league. So that is definitely somebody to watch out for. Somebody that I at least can keep my eye out for. Dallas Goedert being mocked in the first round. He's somebody who got hurt down at the Senior Bowl, but he seems like he has all the skills when it comes to being a receiver. Coming out of South Dakota State, Chris Herndon was injured. He's not as athletic as David Njoku from what I've seen on the limited tape that I have seen Chris Herndon. But I think coming out of the U, he's somebody who could have a good combine down here and kind of raise up the board, somebody to watch out for throughout this week. Troy Fumagalli and Mike Gesicki are two of the bigger names, both coming from Big Ten schools. Fumagalli, Wisconsin, Mike Gesicki, Penn State. A lot of questions about Gesicki's play strength, especially his functional play strength, because his blocking was somewhat subpar this season. When it comes to Fumagalli, how athletic is he? How is he going to test on these agility drills? What's his 40 going to be like? Because he really doesn't create much separation. But he's somebody who has a reliable set of hands and somebody who will block you. So you have to respect that. I look at Jalen Samuels, kind of that Swiss Army knife type of player coming out of North Carolina State. He's probably going to have the fastest 40 of everybody because he's sort of like a running back. He's sort of just a jack of all trades type of player. So him down at the Senior Bowl. He provides a lot of versatility for an offense because you can use him as an H-back, you can use him as a running back, you can put him at the Y, you can split him into the slot. So he's somebody that a lot of teams will probably look at and be like, well, that's very intriguing. Probably will be the fastest 40 in this group if I am a betting man. But moving on to the offensive line. Again, not going to spend much time here. I know that it's going to be big for Connor Williams. In my latest mock draft of the New York Giants, had the Giants selecting him in the second round. I do not know if he will be there. He might be better suited to play guard, but he played with the nasty streak. He was hurt this past season. And if you go back to his 2016 tape, you'll see that he was much better there. So when I think about Connor Williams, It's just Howard's medical is going to check out, and how athletic will he test? Because he seemed like he was a very, very good athlete. I want to see Will Hernandez run this 40 because he is just an absolute monster of a man. Seeing him stand on the stage at 348 pounds was something else. And it wasn't sloppy weight. He's just a really, really big dude. And he also has that shoulder, that neck pad thing that sticks up that's just intimidating, that Mike Allstott kind of thing. So I look at Will Hernandez and I'm like, man, this guy right here, he's somebody who I really want to see what his 40 time is. I wonder if he'll be the slowest. Who knows? But we will find out. And then you got Orlando Brown. How fast is he going to be? Because he's slow-footed. Can he play left tackle? Is he going to be forced to play inside? Because he's just an absolute mountain of a man, standing at 6'8", 360 pounds. Obviously, he was the one who was protecting Baker Mayfield's blindside coming out of Oklahoma. Not going to test great when it comes to the agility drills, when it comes to the 40, because his foot speed is not exactly there, but he is just an absolute mauler. Alex Kappa had a really good Senior Bowl coming out of Humboldt State. Would like to see him really step up. Isaiah Wynn was the left tackle for Georgia. Now he's being kicked inside to guard. Another one who had a great Senior Bowl. I think it's going to be big to see how he also tests, even though I think he's going to be a first-round pick. I know he's being mocked a lot in the second round, but he seems like he has a skill set to be a first-round pick, especially when you take into consideration his positional versatility. Terrell Crosby, Brendan Smith, Wyatt Teller, all names that intrigue me. I haven't watched enough tape on them to really put in any kind of valuable information. Then you got James Daniels and Billy Price. They're more the centers. And James Daniels, I watched Iowa tape. He seemed like he really had a good base and really was fluid in the movements that he executed. But again, don't have enough to really weigh in. So let's move on to the defensive line. Alrighty, so the defensive lineman, this is broken up in the defensive end, defensive lineman, and they actually have the edge position broken up. So first, let's start with Andrew Brown. Andrew Brown, coming out of Virginia, former 5-star recruit. He was incredibly inconsistent on his tape. I feel like he just was never really coached up well to maximize the skill set that he does have, because he does possess incredible initial quickness off the line of scrimmage, violent hands. But the defense that Virginia was running had him playing 5-tech, had him playing sometimes at 1. I think he's going to be a 3-tech. He carries his weight well. He was, I think, 294 pounds or something along those lines, and he looks good being that size. I think he's going to be a really explosive, good 3-tech who can wreak havoc. He's going to need a coaching staff that can kind of teach him how to use his hands and how to play with any kind of technique, because he just did not have that. And again, he was through 2 coaching staffs at Virginia, and it didn't seem like he got along with the coaching staff prior to Bronco Mendenhall coming in. It seemed like he liked being with Coach Mendenhall much more and Mendenhall's staff. But this is somebody who just had so many inconsistencies when it came to playing defensive line. I've seen him get washed down, just get locked up on tight end blocks and all those kind of things, and it was really, really frustrating because you know he has so much more to offer, but he just needs to be taught it. So Andrew Brown, definitely somebody that I think could be drafted in the 4th round, and if he's coached up, put in the right situation, he could really be worth that pick. Because again, he has the body for it, he has the skill set for it, but has he been taught? It's pure rawness when you think about it in that light. We also have a player that I had the privilege to watch coming out of Tulane, Ad Aruna, but his full name is Adatarami. But Aruna, coming out of Tulane, I think he's going to be a practice squad type of player. He has a lot of intriguing physical qualities, like the lateral quickness. I think he's really good on stunts and twists, things of that nature. Open field pursuit, foot speed, pretty good athlete, and he's very, very long. So all of those things are going to lead to him being intriguing. But I just thought his run anchor, his play strength, the way he uses his hands to shed blocks at the point of attack, all somewhat underdeveloped, didn't really have a pass rush plan. And I thought his mental processing wasn't exactly there. It took him a while to react to plays that were happening. So Aruna, somebody who's going to be at the combine. Let's see how he does test athletically, because he is kind of built in the way where you would think that he could have great athletic testing. Then we have Mr. Bradley Chubb. Now, Mr. Bradley Chubb, I don't need to spend too much time on Bradley Chubb. Now, I consider him an edge. NFL.com considers him defensive tackle. Potato kind of thing. He's the consensus top pass rusher on the board. He's explosive from 2-point, 3-point stances. Don't really need to spend too much time. He's probably going to kill the agility drills, the 3-cone, 20-yard shuttle, all those kind of things. This is shoo-in to be a top 10 pick come April's draft. He has that just incredible combination of initial quickness, mental processing to key and diagnose the blocking schemes, and that reaction time to just use his initial quickness and burst to make a play. Bradley Chubb. Now, again, I don't think this draft has the Myles Garrett type of prospect or even the Joey Bosa type of prospect, but Bradley Chubb is the closest thing to that type of player, the consensus top pick coming out of this draft. And then you have players like Marcus Davenport, who the NFL kind of claimed as their darling, the NFL.com. Marcus Davenport, I like Marcus Davenport. I like Marcus Davenport as a second-round kind of developmental pick, kind of in the light of what Tano Passanio was. Now, I don't know if he's as raw as Passanio was coming out last year, but people are mocking this guy in the top 10, and he doesn't have the experience playing against this top competition. Now, UTSA is not an FCS school, but he won by running through people. He won by using his brute strength just to run through individuals. He cannot do that at the NFL. A lot of his highlights are him isolated against a tackle, or him isolated against an H-back or a tight end, and him just absolutely destroying them with play strength and just pure brute physicality. He needs to refine his use of hands. He needs to learn how to use counters. He needs to learn how to put his hands in the right place. He needs to play with a lower pad level to maximize the strength that he does have, to kind of get leverage, being the size that he is, because he has the size and the length that you want in a defensive end. And you know what? He does have explosive traits. Obviously has play strength, but he's not that top 10 pick that a lot of people are building him up to be. I just do not see that at the moment. But what I do see is a player that you can draft in the second round and he could develop into something really, really special. But if you draft him in the top 5, top 10, and you just stick him to start, because you're drafting him to start day one no matter what, he might be a little lost at first. I think he needs some development. Now, he's not Ziggy Ansah raw, but he's still raw. I think that needs to be acknowledged. Then we got Duke Ejiofor. Now, Duke Ejiofor, I did a piece on him. It's up on Inside the Pylon right now. I know some people have called him Duke Ejiofor. I'm going to say Duke Ejiofor because, A, his initials are DE. He's listed at defensive end. That's pretty cool. And B, having edge as an edge defender in your last name, that's double pretty cool. So those are things that I'm going to definitely keep doing. But Ejiofor, I think he has the most mature pass rushing repertoire of anybody in this edge class. He literally has effective power swipes, clubs, swims, arm overs, shoulder dips, rips, push pulls, and his hands are so active at the point of attack. He was able to rush the passer as a 3-tech, a 5-tech, used on stunts. I really like what Duke Ejiofor brings to the table. He's not going to test great in Indianapolis. He doesn't have that kind of, I would say, explosiveness or athletic ability or the ability to change a direction like someone like Sam Hubbard has. But he's definitely somebody who you could draft, and he's going to be able to get after the passer. I just don't think the combine is set up for him. I was really upset when he backed out of the Senior Bowl, but he had a legitimate excuse from everything that Phil Savage led us on to believe. And we have Deshaun Hand coming out of Alabama. Again, former number 1 recruit in his recruiting class. Deshaun Hand played in that multiple front where he does a lot of kind of different things for Alabama. Now, I talked to Deshaun down at the Senior Bowl. He said he wanted to be a 3 technique. I just don't see the explosiveness. He's kind of a lumbering player to be that 3 technique, but this is somebody who's probably going to win the bench press reps because he's incredibly strong at the point of attack. His functional strength is very, very good. He's probably going to go down there and win the bench press record, at least for the defensive line class. So Deshaun Hand, somebody to definitely keep in mind when it comes to that, but he's just not a great athlete in my mind, and his play speed it leaves a lot to be desired. But great kid, got to talk to him down there, and I actually asked him who is kind of par for the course when it comes to me, who was the hardest person he had to face. And he hedged. He went with Cam Robinson in practice. And I was like, all right. But he actually was like, man, that's a really good question. It was a really great interview. And, of course, I didn't have my recorder on, so I could be lying to you right now. But I'm not. Or maybe I am. Anyways, Deshaun Hand, somebody who could win the bench press. But moving on to Mr. Jalen Holmes coming out of Ohio State, and you also have Tyquan Lewis, two edges that are going to go down there. I don't really see, especially Tyquan, testing too well athletically, even though I have Tyquan Lewis a little bit higher on my rankings, because I do think he is a sound run defender who plays with very good mental processing and is very, very assignment sound, whereas Jalen is much more raw. But Jalen has a really exceptional frame, incredibly long, but carries his weight very well. When you look at him, you're like, wow, he's 280, and you realize how much muscle mass he actually has on his long frame. He would play one technique, he'd be bounced around a lot in Greg Schiano's defense. Speaking of Ohio State, Sam Hubbard will have a piece coming out on Sam Hubbard here soon. Incredibly versatile pass rusher who has only been playing in the trenches for a couple years now. He was recruited by Urban Meyer to play safety, but he's somebody who I think can really make a difference in the NFL. His ability to change direction, plant his foot on stunts, and then explode into the pocket is rare. And it was really, really fun to watch. Now, again, isn't the, I don't want to say he's the most explosive of the group, because he's not by any means. I think his upfield burst is very good on the scale of excellent rare. But he's very, very assignment sound. His competitive toughness, he is one of those players who gets motor sacks consistently. And I love this kid. I think he's going to be a high second-round pick, and he's going to be a starter in the league for quite some time. I've been beating that Sam Hubbard drum for a while now. You also have Arden Key. Now, no player has more to gain from the 2018 NFL Combine than Arden Key. He had several off-the-field issues in the interview portion of the Combine. Is absolutely crucial for him. I mean, we saw him leave the program. He supposedly put on 30 pounds before the Combine. A lot of just weird things surrounded him, so there's going to be a lot of questions. And a lot of people are comparing him to Randy Gregory. Teams are going to have to see what his play weight was. There's going to be just so many questions surrounding Arden. But he does have that athletic ability, and he could test very well. So this is a huge week. I think there isn't a prospect that this is a bigger week for than Arden Key. Then we have Lorenzo Carter. Now, Lorenzo Carter is my dark horse to win the 40-yard dash. There's a lot of buzz surrounding Roquan Smith, rightfully so, but I do feel like evaluators are somewhat sleeping on Carter. Now, Carter has some struggle at the point of attack, shedding blocks, taking on blocks with his play strength and things of that nature, but he's a very good athlete. Plays with pretty good leverage for a guy who's 6'6", about 242 pounds. Again, he needs to improve on that lower body drive and things of that nature, especially his ability to stack and shed blockers. But his length, his lateral quickness, his explosive nature, I really like Lorenzo Carter. I think he's somebody after the Combine who's going to get bumped up into the second day. Ogbanya Okoronkwo, somebody else who I think will do very well in the 40-yard dash, the vertical, and the broad jump. Very good athlete coming out of Oklahoma, relatively short, but he had very, very long arms down at the Senior Bowl. Has exceptional change of direction, athletic ability, very good flexibility. Somebody I'm going to be watching, and definitely somebody who could win some of these drills with his athletic ability. Then you have Josh Sweat coming out of Florida State. Now, Josh Sweat, I really liked his tape. Mainly because I'm somebody who views the fact that he had this significant injury in high school, this dislocation of his knee, along with a torn ACL. I mean, you just get written off after that. But supposedly, according to a lot of people in the media, he might run in like the 4.5s, which is absolutely ridiculous because he's 6'5", 250 pounds. So Sweat, and he's somebody else who has lower body explosiveness. I look at Josh Sweat and I say, damn, you could do that after everything that's happened to your knee? That'd be so impressive, especially at the size that he is. But his medicals are going to be the most important aspect of the Combine. Can the teams trust that knee? But I really liked his game, and I'm really pulling for Josh Sweat. He's very talented. Good fluidity. Gets his hips turned at the top of the arc. Possesses that very good lower body strength to anchor. Powerful hands to jolt. So I'm pulling for Mr. Sweat. Then we have Kamoko Ture out of Rutgers. Now, Ture, he really opened up a lot of eyes down at the Reese's Senior Bowl. And I watched some Rutgers games this year. Again, I'm a Jersey guy, and Ture is a Jersey guy, so, I'm going to have to be pulling for him. But it didn't seem like he jumped out at me while watching these Rutgers games. And then I see that Rutgers was kind of dropping him into coverage a lot, which he can do. Adds to his versatility. But he is explosive. He does have the initial quickness. He has really, really good flexion in his ankles. And that was really put on display at the Senior Bowl during this one rep that I saw, which really opened my eyes. And I thought, now it wasn't as consistent as I would like, but he did use his hands in an advantageous way. He had push-pulls, dips. He had a pretty good whip move. But I just want to see more of it. But he's had a very impressive offseason so far. So Kamoko Toure is definitely somebody who could just keep building this stock, move up into that day 2, high-end day 2 range, potentially. But we will see. Time will tell. Then we have Olusokanemi Adeniyi coming out of Toledo. Now, this guy played with an edge in college, and he was somebody who was really, really bursty. Now, he doesn't have the best frame, but I think he can fit in as a one-gap penetrator who can convert speed to power, who plays with a nasty edge, who will hit you. He's incredibly physical. But again, I don't think he's going to win the 40-yard dash or anything of that nature. But he does have that explosive first step. Does that mean he's going to be, the splits? The 10-yard splits? Who knows? We'll see. But his measurements will also be important because he was a junior coming out, and he's somewhat smaller. I want to see what his length is. I want to see what his height actually is. But his tape was actually pretty fun to watch, if you ask me. And we have Chad Thomas coming out of Miami with the other two very talented defensive linemen in Kendrick Norton and R.J. McIntosh. Kendrick Norton's more of that one technique, two down type player, whereas McIntosh is a three technique who really needs to improve versus the run, really needs to improve with his anchor, really needs to improve with his play strength. But man, is he explosive. He has great arm over move. That is R.J. McIntosh we're talking about. But Chad Thomas, ideal size for a 4-3 end. He must learn to use his hands better, to string moves together. And again, he has this ideal size. What is he going to run? That's my biggest question. I would love to see what he's going to run. But this guy could be a starter on your line, but he is not a finished product right now. He has the physical gifts right there. And if he can really kind of live up to this athletic testing, show up at the combine, run a high 4.6, even early 4.7, that would be really great for Chad Thomas, to be honest. That might even be better than great with the size that he has. If he can run somewhere in the 4.7s. But he's not overly flexible. Doesn't really consistently corner. His pad level gets way too high. But Chad Thomas, somebody to watch. Then we have Dorrance Armstrong out of Kansas. He has a great ability to use his length while still having this athletic ability that is eye-opening. And he supposedly played with a partially torn ACL this year, which is mind-blowing if you ask me. But has very good burst, excellent flexibility. His hands are very active to disengage. But his medicals are really going to need to check out if that ACL was torn. Because his stats really went down. He had 2 sacks this season. And I mean, he played in Kansas, Big 12 team. Every offense knew to focus on him. But he's really going to need to improve on this play strength and the ability to take runs on at the point of attack. Gets power and counter concepts. Things of that nature he really struggled with. He was really, really poor against the run. But I look at Dorrance. Athletically, he could just blow this combine out of the water. He's one of those guys, along with Lorenzo Carter, who have the athletic profile to just blow up. So Dorrance Armstrong, Lorenzo Carter, 2 names you must remember. We also have Jeff Holland, who don't think he's going to be particularly effective at the combine, but he's somebody who is very, very physical. I think that he is a very smart player. He's a gap-responsible player. And I love the way he uses his hands, especially the violence that he packs in them. That's something that I love to see from defensive linemen, from edge players, is how violent are they with their hands. Because I look at Arden Key, I didn't think he was particularly violent with his hands. I look at somebody like Holland, I look at somebody like Chubb and some of the other top end guys. They're very, very violent with their hands. So I love that. We also have Harold Landry now. I think the combine could really proved to be fruitful for Harold Landry. And why am I talking like a medieval, jester or something? I don't know. But that's just what happens sometimes. I hope you enjoy it. But Harold Landry, coming out of Boston College, again, the 2016 tape was amazing. The 2017 tape, played in 8 games, was playing through an ankle injury. And when you think about being a pass rusher, You need your ankle. For a guy who relies on pure ankle flexion and the ability to put significant weight on that joint to be effective, if it's not stable, you're going to be affected. And that's what happened to Harold Landry. And he backed out of the Reese's Senior Bowl, so we didn't get a chance to see him. So this is going to be the first time for him to prove, hey, I'm still that 2016 Harold Landry. Draft me in the first round. Because this is somebody who could bend the edge, get up the arc so quickly, has that explosiveness that you want. But the medicals are going to need to check out for that. But I think Harold Landry comes out, has a good week. Harold Landry's a first-round pick here. I mean, the edge class isn't exactly something that's going to wow anybody. It's not the best edge class we've ever seen. You got Bradley Chubb, who's a shoo-in top 5 pick. But then you have Harold Landry, probably number 2. And Sam Hubbard in that area. Davenport hovers around there. I think Lorenzo Carter, but he still has some deficiencies. And Arden Key has way too many question marks. So the edge group, very, very intriguing. Still a lot of question marks. And if Landry can just go there and show up, boom. There it is. Then you have somebody like Kentavious Street, kind of unsung, along with B.J. Hill and Justin Jones, because Bradley Chubb got all of the attention. But Kentavious Street, who works out quite often, and somebody who killed East-West Shrine Game week, according to a lot of the reports coming out of there. But Street has the strength, has that toughness that you want. I'm doing the evaluation as we speak on Kentavious Street. I haven't seen much of him. I've seen a couple games. But he seems like that kind of player. But where will he be drafted? NFL.com has him at 6'2" right now. I thought he looked a little bit bigger than that, to be honest. But that's somebody else that you got to pay attention to. When you look at the defensive tackles, I'll briefly go through this because I am just yapping up a storm up in here. Taven Bryan out of Florida, incredibly explosive 3 technique. He's probably going to test really well, and he's probably going to be moved up into the first round. If I'm a betting man, that's what I'm going to say. Then you have Maurice Hurst coming out of Michigan, another defensive lineman who I haven't seen enough of, but what I've seen seems like he's first round. He's a first round lock-in kind of guy. Because the defensive line, you have Deron Payne, you have Maurice Hurst, you have Taven Bryan, who is different than those other 2 kind of players. But Deron Payne's that shut-down, run defender, smart Alabama kind of defensive player, and we've seen him step up on the biggest stages and just ball out. Derek Nottie coming from Florida State, that is somebody else who is compact, small to the ground, but somebody who plays with great leverage. And then you have Vita Vea coming out of Washington. Now, Vita Vea, I think he's another one who could test pretty well at the combine. I think he's already going to be a first-round pick, no doubt. But he's 6'4", 344 pounds, and he has pretty high athletic ability. He's somebody who's just somewhat scary, to be honest. Very, very powerful. People compare him to Danny Shelton because they're both Hawaiian and coming out of Washington, but he is a much different player than Danny Shelton. He's not just a 2-gapping nose technique. But I think Vita Vea, he can play 5 technique, he can play 3 technique. He's just very, very versatile and very, very fun to watch. Then you have Nathan Shepard coming out of Fort Hays State. Now, I was able to watch a few games of Nathan Shepard. There's not a lot on YouTube, but I was able to acquire some good stuff on Nathan Shepard, and he dominated his level of competition. Still not exactly fully polished, though. And I think that's easy to say about somebody from a D2 level. I mean, just watching the tape, I thought his pad level always got high, but it didn't matter because he was so much stronger than everybody else. I thought his pass rush plan was just pure force. I'm going to use my force and my speed, and I'm going to beat you. And he didn't have the technique or the use of hands that you really, really want if he's going to win at a higher level. I also didn't think he really bull rushed straight through interior offensive linemen at his level as much as I would have liked to see, to be honest. He still creates pressure, though. He's still explosive. His pulls, his swipes, his hands are incredibly violent. And Nathan Shepard will probably be a day 2 pick, and don't sleep on the kid. I know he's coming from a D2 program, but the kid is still a very, very good athlete. And he's very, very intimidating. And when he was at the Senior Bowl, he was manhandling his teammates until he broke his hand. So Nathan Shepard, I hope that hand is good, and I hope he can go down there and just ball out. Built physically, very, very intimidating. I would love to see how many bench press reps he can put up as well. But moving on to just some of the pure edge prospects. We talked about a lot of them already. Some of the ones that I have not talked about, Hercules Mataafa. Now, The NFL, there's really no room for a 250-pound one technique, so that's not going to work for Hercules, but they're going to test him out at the edge. Now, he's not exactly the longest defender. I'm trying to sit here and think, where is Hercules going to play? Because he's going to have to switch positions, obviously, playing mostly one tech and three tech at college. And again, he's a good athlete, good initial quickness, and that's how he won. And they did a lot of stunts up at Washington State. And you're going to be able to do that now? The NFL, with your size? I mean, it's a projection. It really is, because his strength at the point of attack is not there, especially when it comes to playing at the NFL level. But he won primarily on quickness. How long is that going to last at the NFL? Because he has the burst, has lateral agility, was good at stunting and twisting. And I thought he was a violent tackler, to be honest. But it's just one of those things, man, where that's a huge projection. And where is he going to play? Definitely somebody who we'll be monitoring throughout that week, though. Darius Jackson coming out of Jacksonville State. Now somebody else coming out of FCS school, smaller school, not a lot of people are talking about him. But Jackson, I thought he was somebody who had really good initial quickness. Actually, excellent initial quickness off the ball. I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about him, and he's somebody who set the Jacksonville State pass rushing record. I think he could be a good 3-4 will linebacker. And the level of competition, somewhat concerning. I didn't think his lower leg drive was as good as I would have liked it to be. And he also needs to clean up some of his tackling mechanics. He left his feet a lot, and he doesn't drive through his tackles as much as I would have liked to see. Not a long guy as well. But his explosiveness, his initial burst, his athletic ability, his flexibility, his center of gravity. I thought he played with excellent ability to keen diagnose blocking schemes, and he reacted very accordingly, picking up running backs coming out of the backfield when his pass rushing plan wasn't going to win. Now, I don't know if that was designed by the defensive coordinator, but he showed very good self-awareness in those kind of situations. I think Darius Jackson, I know the length is somewhat of concern, obviously, level of competition, but I think he could have a place in this league. I don't see how that's being ridiculous, and no one's talking about him whatsoever. I think he's another one who could have a good 10-yard split at the combine because he has that explosiveness. And I think Darius Jackson's somebody you might not know right now, but somebody who is at least intrigued me on tape. I think Uchenna Nwosu coming out of USC, somebody else who isn't the strongest at the point of attack, but a very good athlete. So how is he going to test? Marcus Haynes, same kind of thing, not the strongest at the point of attack. Pretty good athlete coming out of Ole Miss. So those are kind of these players that I am looking at from the edge position. Javon Rollins-Jones coming out of Arkansas State is another player that I have an evaluation on. When it comes to Javon Rollins-Jones, he was one of those players that I felt didn't have the hip and ankle flexibility I want from an edge player. Now, his upfield burst, especially the second and third steps, I thought his initial burst was good, but his second and third step wasn't as good as I would have liked to see. I don't think he moved well in space. Thought he was just somewhat of a stiffer kind of player. But I thought he played with pretty solid ability to keen diagnose. Thought he did pretty well against the run as well. So somebody who might be drafted later on, coming out of, again, a smaller school in Arkansas State. But you look through these edge prospects, there's a lot of guys who you can get maybe later that you can turn them into something. High effort guys like Joe Osman, who was snubbed from the combine, but was tied for the lead in sacks coming out of Central Michigan this year. So also you have Dalvin Bellamy, and not a great athlete coming out of Georgia, but somebody who played on one of the best defenses this year. So I think there are a lot of people that you can pay attention to. This isn't the best edge class we've ever seen, but still quality guys. Let's briefly go through cornerbacks, safeties, and linebackers, and then I'll shut up. Alrighty, so for the linebackers, medicals for Jack Cichy, going to be huge. Again, Jack Cichy was probably going to be a second-round prospect. Tore his pec, came back, tore his ACL, really hasn't played a lot of football in the last 2 years, decided to leave school and not take the medical red shirt and come into the draft. It's a bold decision, but I'm really pulling for him. Again, these kids with these injuries and things of that nature, it's very unfortunate for the kid, but I really would like to see it work out for him. Josie Jewell, how is he going to run? How good of an athlete is he? Sean Dion Hamilton, coming out of Alabama. Josie Jewell's out of Iowa, by the way. Go Iowa. Sean Dion Hamilton, coming out of Alabama. Athletic, right? Medicals. Then you got guys like Mike Kaiser, Mike McCray, Jason Kabinda. How fast are they going to run? Are they only limited to being two down players? Are they going to be able to stay in the hip pocket of somebody in man coverage? All these questions are going to surround them. Leighton Vander Esch. He's kind of moving up board slowly, but how good of an athlete is he? I don't think he's a very good athlete or an excellent athlete. He's a good athlete from what I've seen. But he can prove that he is a very good athlete at the combine. Then you have guys like Kenny Young, who was down at the East-West Shrine Game, made a name for himself down there. How can he do? He's coming out of UCLA. Haven't watched much on him. Tremaine Edmonds, being mocked in the top 10, coming out of Virginia Tech. 19 years old, incredibly long. Another one who is a good athlete. Now, then you got Roquan Smith, who Roquan Smith is just the man. Honestly, his tape is very fun to watch. Now, again, I thought Roquan Smith, his pursuit, his range is absolutely ridiculous. It's out of this world, his speed and his ability to read plays and react like that. But I did see a little bit of deficiencies when it came to him taking on blocks, shedding, because he is about 220 pounds. I saw him get bullied by some interior lines when an ace block would come his way. He'd get pushed back just a little bit. That's just something to bring up. But Roquan Smith still will be probably a top 5 player evaluated by me by the end of the day. He's absolutely ridiculous and one of the funnest players to watch. And come Sunday, he's going to be...
Are you ready for some football?
He's always going to be ready to play some football. Rashaan Evans, somebody else who might sneak into the first round coming out of Alabama, not as athletic as Roquan Smith, but somebody who is physical, is going to come downhill, and he's going to punch you right in the mouth. Very fun to watch. Malik Jefferson, more of the athletic type coming out of Texas. He definitely needs a lot of work when it comes to the mental side of the game. Shaquem Griffin, got to pull for Shaquem Griffin, only has one hand, and he's coming out of Central Florida. His brother was drafted last year by the Seattle Seahawks, somebody that you have to root for, will make a team on special teams and kind of provide his value that way, but there's always going to be somewhat of a concern in the fact that he only has one hand. I think Dorian O'Daniel can have a really good combine, so should Sky Moore, two very athletic linebackers who can kind of cover in space pretty well. And then I look at Fred Warner coming out of BYU, somebody else who kind of made his name for himself down at the Senior Bowl. I know John Ledyard has talked a lot about Fred Warner, somebody who can come to the combine and really ball out and even make more of a name for himself and rise him up the boards. Quickly going over the cornerbacks, Jair Alexander is one of the better man cover cornerbacks. He dealt with injuries coming out of Louisville. He could be a first-round pick. I want to see how he tests. I think the fastest 40 could be somebody like Dante Jackson. I know a lot of people are talking about him. I've seen a couple films. He is very, very fast. Anthony Averett coming out of Alabama. How will he test? Carlton Davis. How's he going to look in his back pedal? How stiff is Carlton Davis? Because he is a bigger type of cornerback. I want to see how fluid his hips turn in the positional drills. Duke Dawson coming out of Florida. Smaller. He's kind of labeled as the nickel corner. But I think it could be important to him to see how smooth his hips are. And that's going to be the same for a lot of these guys. I think Brandon Facyson coming out of Virginia Tech, he's a bigger corner. So how fluid will he be? Looking at down this list, I think somebody like the kid from Colorado, Isaiah Oliver, he's looking like he could really kill this combine and move up and solidify himself as a first-round pick. And then I look at Tavares McFadden, who was being mocked in the top 10 last offseason, had a somewhat down year, and now nobody's talking about him. If he can come out here, bigger corner, longer, press kind of guy, and just have a really good day, I mean, that's going to really raise his stock and help him. But again, he was being mocked there not that long ago, and everything about Florida State just went down the tubes this year. So are people just overlooking him because he didn't have the year that we all expected, and maybe he is a better prospect than a fourth-round pick or wherever he's being mocked right now? Something to think about. Dante Jackson, again, out of LSU. Will he run the fastest 40? We will see. Mike Hughes coming out of Central Florida. How fluid is he? And then I go to the safeties and some of the other cornerbacks that I wanted to just touch on real quick. I think Isaac Yiadom coming out of Boston College, he seemed like he had a pretty good week down in Mobile. Denzel Ward out of Ohio State. I think it could be important for him to run a pretty fast 40 as well, and also his measurements are going to be huge because Denzel Ward, what is he, 5'10", hopefully, 5'11", hopefully, because he is somewhat smaller So that's something that's going to really be a sticking point when it comes to him. And Levi Wallace. Now, he claimed to have the flu during the Senior Bowl, but he was very, very lanky. Came in weighing something absolutely ridiculous. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but Levi Wallace is definitely somebody who you really hope his weight got brought up. It was somewhere in like the 170s or 180s. So you want that to be brought up, and he looked really, really skinny. So hopefully that has been settled. And Denzel Ward, again, probably I wouldn't say consensus, the top corner in this class, because Isaiah Oliver is up there with him, as is Mike Hughes, but definitely somebody who could benefit from a really good combine. And then you have the safeties. Now, the safeties, I think Derwin James could absolutely kill the vert and the broad jump and just have a really, really good combine down here. And Derwin James, some people are saying, well, what's his role? Is he a linebacker? I heard the same questions about Marcus May last year, and I felt like he had a really good year. I watched a lot of Jet games this season. I saw a PFS stat that said that Marcus May had a poor set. I just did not agree with that. I thought for the Jets, two safeties back there being rookies, I thought they played really well, him and Jamal Adams together. But Derwin James is going to be a first-round pick. Athletically, he's absolutely ridiculous. One of the funnest players to watch in this class. And you have Minkah Fitzpatrick coming out of Alabama, also a Jersey guy. I want to say he went to St. Peter's Prep out in Jersey City, but that's irrelevant. I think he's another person who's going to do really, really well athletically. He has a couple plays where his backside pursuit is one of the dumbest things I have ever seen. So I look at Minkah, I look at Derwin, and I say, damn, those are two good safety prospects in this class. Some of the other safeties in this class that are somewhat intriguing, I think Ronnie Harrison out of Alabama doesn't really get as much buzz as the other two, but he's somebody obviously playing. We've seen Alabama safeties come to the league, Landon Collins, and have a lot of success. I think he has pretty good size. He's fast. He has the range that you really want. I think he'll probably be a second-round pick. And being the size that he is, 6'3", 214 pounds, he comes out and he runs really, really fast. Might open some eyes. But a lot of these other guys I haven't watched too much tape on. Kaiser White, I know Matty Brown of Inside the Pylon has a piece on Kaiser White. I just saw him be very, very physical in the few games that I have seen. I don't know how fluid he is in space or how he will test, like if he was going to be a cover one safety. Don't really think that's really in his repertoire. Dominic Sanders, another athletic safety coming out of Georgia. We saw him get beat on the national championship game where Tua Tagovailoa threw the touchdown pass, and Sanders wasn't there in what the cornerback thought was going to be help over top. But he can have a good combine down here as a safety, test well, and then, hey, people will forget about that and he'll get drafted. But there really is no way to forget about that. There's really no way at all. But yes, so that is the combine in what I said was going to be brief, and it's been an hour and 15 minutes, so I want to apologize for that. But before I go, combine snubs. So, combine snubs. For the running backs, Ralph Webb, Ito Smith. Wide receivers, Dorrance Fountain out of Northern Iowa was snubbed. 6'2", 210 pounds, 34-plus inch arms. Did not get the invite. No one loves Northern Iowa. Adam Brenneman out of UMass was hurt down at the Senior Bowl. He's not exactly the most athletic tight end anyways, but he was snubbed, as was Poona Ford, coming out of Texas. Now, I guess if you're built like a Coke can, no one wants to see you run the 40. I would have loved to see Poona Ford run the 40. So, Poona, I got you back on this one. But they're going to have to wait till his pro day to see him run the 40 because he has not gotten an invite, sadly. And Texas's pro day is March 28th, a very good date, I might add. For edge, Joe Alsman, again, not twitchy, not overly athletic, but again, he led the nation, was tied in the nation for sacks. Doesn't get the invite. And his pro day is on March 20th, so that's where you can see Joe Alsman and get all of his athletic testing. And then we have Trayvon Henderson. Now, Matty Brown loved Trayvon Henderson when we were at the Senior Bowl, and I trust Matty Brown's assessment of safeties. He doesn't get the invite, and I think that one really surprised me, to be honest. And we're going to have to wait a little while, March 20th, for the Hawaii Pro Day to be held. So as for Pro Days, the top ones are March 7th is the first Pro Days that will be held, Georgia State, Northern Colorado, Purdue. And then March 8th has Alabama, Central Oklahoma, Colorado, Colorado State, East Central Oklahoma State, East Kentucky, Marshall, Oklahoma, Southern Nazarene, don't know where that is, Temple, and Western State. So that is when the pro days will kick off, and we will just start getting more and more information. And us over at Inside the Pylon, we're going to keep having content. So go to Inside the Pylon, tune in to this podcast, which I think you're already tuned in if I'm no betting man, and go over to at IT Pylon on Twitter and give us a like, comment on some of our stuff, and hey, we'll shoot the breeze together. It will be a lot of fun. So I am Nicholas Falato. This has been the first episode without Mark Schofield, and this is Breaking the Plane. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll probably upload this onto Footballin' as well, so that audience can get this and hopefully come over to Breaking the Plane and check us out. We will be providing good football content, quality football content for you, the listeners. And please be interactive. We love associating with you guys on Twitter. So please reach out. Give the podcast a like, comment, whatever you want to do. It's all good. As for Inside the Pylon, Nick Falato, that's me. I am signing off. You guys have a lovely, lovely day.